Election 2024. When I show up at my polling station on November 5th, that is the ballot I'm going to look at. And we'll look it over here in a second. But before we do, Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump 2024. How did we get here? Well, the best way to understand how we got here is to look at the 2016 primary. The primary is the election before the election. It is where the Republicans decide which person will be their presidential candidate, and the Democrats decide which person will be their candidate. It's best to go back to more simpler times and look at 2016's primaries rather than 2020 and 2024, which have been a little bit hairy. So let's look at these guys. They all wanted to be the Republican candidate for the presidency. Ultimately, Donald Trump was the winner, and he would face off against Hillary Clinton. How's it work? So, Republican voters choose between a handful of people who want to be the candidate. And so the Republican voters vote in each state, and ultimately someone is elected. And you can see the early states that vote: Iowa, Nevada, Colorado, New Hampshire. There are elections in each state, and just like in the regular presidential election, you accumulate points. The guy with the most points ends up being the Republican candidate. It's a state-by-state system, and some states go before others. They don't all vote at once. And you can see down here at the bottom, the calendar: Iowa votes, the New Hampshire votes, the Nevada votes, and as you go through, different candidates receive points, they accumulate points, and in the end, the one with the most points, or the majority of the points, ends up being the Republican nominee for the president. Same thing for the Democrats: Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, South Carolina. We have election after election after election. So rather than everybody voting on the same day, like in the presidency on November 5th, 2024, the way the primaries work, there's state-by-state elections. They happen on different days: February 1st, February 9th, February 20th. And you accumulate points over time, and the person that gets the most, the majority, that ends up being the nominee that will represent the party. So you go through, you check the boxes. This is the primary. This is how you pick the person that will run for president. And as we go throughout the dates, February 1st, February 9th, February 20th, state to state to state, some people drop out. Some people keep on rolling. And the people that keep on rolling, moving from state to state and get closer and closer to being the nominee, are the people that are accumulating points. And as they accumulate points and are winning over voters, they become more likely to win, and they are able to fundraise, get more money, and to keep financing their campaign. Because remember, it's not all one day. February 1st, 2 weeks later, another week, they're flying around, they're traveling around. It gets expensive. You need to be able to fundraise. You need to be able to buy TV advertisements. And so in order to get the money, you need to prove that you're able to win. And the way that you can prove that you are able to win is by getting votes. If you don't get votes, no one funds you. And if you don't receive donations, you can't go to Iowa. You can't go to New Hampshire, to Nevada, South Carolina, Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, Massachusetts. You run out of money. You can't buy ads. If you can't buy ads, if you can't show up in the state, no one knows who you are. No one's voting for you. You drop down. Someone else who's getting the ads, who's publicly available, they get the votes. They win the elections in Iowa. They score points in New Hampshire, and they start building up their total. Eventually, you just have to drop out, and only the strong survive. It's all about that cash. You gotta win. You gotta get off to an early start. Get some wins in Iowa. Build up some money. Get the momentum going. Score some points in New Hampshire. Get some more money. Keep it going. If you don't do well in Iowa, and then you struggle in New Hampshire, you go broke. Iowa then becomes a very important state. Now, one of the things or issues with primaries, which we're not getting too deep into, is when you do these primaries and caucuses on different dates, obviously, if your state comes first, you become more significant. There's a lot of attention that goes to Iowa. It becomes a very significant, important state in selecting who could be the future president. Same thing with New Hampshire. Many of the other states, like California, Ohio at times, may complain, or Michigan. The reason why is because their primaries are a lot later. And by the time that the voters in Ohio or the Republicans in Ohio get to vote for who they think is going to be the Republican, or the Democrats in Ohio vote for who they think is going to be their candidate, it's already been decided. It's already over. Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, someone already jumped out to a big lead, and many of the candidates have already dropped out. And by the time the Ohio primary takes place or the California primary takes place, it's pretty much over. So some people have problems. Maybe you should have all these vote at once, but that's not the way the Democratic Party wants to do it. That's not the way the Republican Party wants to do it. There have been arguments and complaints over the last couple of years about, Iowa now is way too important. New Hampshire has too much of a role in selecting a future president. We need to shake things up. And they have changed things, and some people have appreciated it, and some people think that by switching around which states go first or not, or which states count, that there is some manipulation going on in some dark rooms. People behind the scenes are pulling the strings and manipulating and secretly selecting who could be the future president. Anyway, that's for another day. Anyway, we can look at Iowa. Let's look specifically at Iowa from 2016. You can see Ted Cruz got the most votes, but it is not a winner-take-all. Donald Trump, close second, and each of them scored their points, or their delegates, 8, 7, 7, 3, 1. We had basically a two-way race in the Democratic Party, split basically evenly, and so they split the points. There it is. There's Iowa. Then they would go on to New Hampshire, do something similar, and candidates would continue to accumulate delegates. And the ones that build up these delegates or scoring points are going to get more donations, are going to be able to run more ads and continue their momentum and try to rush towards the presidency. And the guys that are not scoring points are going to have a harder time getting funds, raising money, thus buying ads, thus being able to fly and hop from state to campaign, and they eventually will fall out. That's how the primary season works. It is, for the most part, a season. A bunch of candidates running against each other, jumping from county to county. I mean, they think Vivek Ramaswamy visited every single county in the Iowa primary season for the Iowa caucus, trying to become a future president. Ultimately, Donald Trump would win in 2024, but you're going everywhere. You're going to state fairs, shaking hands, trying to raise money, get out there. So there it is. It is a season. Iowa, New Hampshire, you're jumping from state to state to state. And all of this costs a lot of money. So you got to keep winning and scoring points. And if you do so, you want to be the last man standing. 2016, the last man standing was Donald Trump for the Republicans, and the last female standing was Hillary Clinton. You can see the points there. In the end, when all things were said and done at the end of the primary season, Trump would ultimately be the Republican candidate after winning state by state by state by state. And Hillary Clinton would ultimately be selected by the Democratic voters to represent the Democratic Party in the 2016 presidential election. So when we look at the Republicans' primary season, the Republicans primarily vote for their candidate by the people. Each state, the Republicans vote, the points are accumulated, and when we go to the end, in the end, with the guy with the most points, they go to the Republican National Convention, and that person is nominated to be the Republican candidate. Democrats as well, but they do it a little different. So there are primaries and caucuses in all the different states, and the Democrats vote, and they pick which Democrat they want to be their Democrat candidate. But there's a catch. The Democrats also have super delegates. Super delegates also get to vote, and their votes count towards points in selecting who will be the Democratic president. Wait, what? Why not just let the people vote? Why is there a super delegate, a super official Democrat representative connected to the party? Why does he get to vote? Why is his vote more important than the people? Well, let's explain why. But before we explain the why, let's talk about kind of the problem here. Bernie Sanders in 2016 and even 2020, very popular among the people. The people voted for him in most of the primaries and the caucuses, and he was scoring a ton of points. Clinton did pretty well too with the people, but more importantly, she did well with the super delegates, the political insiders, the people connected to the power brokers in the Democratic Party, and those super delegates definitely helped her earn points and definitely helped her become the presidential nominee. Not fair, says the people. Well, there is a good reason, or a bad reason, why the Democrats do it this way. Oh, we wanted Bernie. Yeah, well, you didn't get Bernie because super delegates. All right, so why did the Democrats, or why did they have it? Why did they create super delegates? Well, once upon a time, back in 1972, the Democrats didn't have super delegates that helped pick who would be their presidential nominee. They left it completely up to the populace. They left it completely up to the Democratic voters. Let the people decide. And in 1972, the people decided, we want McGovern to be our president. The people in the Democratic Party went through the primaries, and ultimately McGovern was their selection, and he got blasted. Crushed. Look at that map. Are you seeing red? Oh my goodness. Nixon scored 520 points. McGovern only won one state, Massachusetts, 17 points. Nice job, people. Good call. How'd that pick of McGovern work out for you? So, Democratic officials said, I don't think this grassroots thing is working out for us. I don't think completely leaving the decision to pick our presidential nominee up to the people is the best call. Maybe we know what's better for the party. And so we need more say. We need super delegates. So yeah, we'll count the people's vote in picking the president, but just in case it looks like they're going to pick the wrong person, we are going to intervene a little bit, throw in some super delegates to make sure that maybe we pick the right person. We're picking now. And in 2016, the people may have wanted Bernie Sanders, but the party knew better. Hillary Clinton ended up being the nominee, and she lost. Good job, superdelegates. How'd that work out for you? 270 is needed to win. Donald Trump scored 304 points in the Electoral College. As we'll talk about in the future, yes, Hillary Clinton did win the popular vote, but then again, Democrats often win the popular vote because of large population centers and building up giant, massive vote totals in California and New York. We will discuss that in a future video where we analyze the Electoral College and the popular vote. But the popular vote doesn't matter. National vote doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is the Electoral College. Doesn't matter how many points you win by in a game. You can win every game by 30 points. You can win every game by 1 point. A win's a win, a loss is a loss. Anyway, we'll talk more about that later. Let's look at my ballot. Let's break it down. Election 2024. If you live where I live in Putnam County, well, I probably shouldn't give out my address, so let's not do that. Almost did that. That could have been bad. Going to get doxxed. So there's my ballot. We'll look closer at the individual selections that I will have to make. We'll start with Senator. So in Ohio, we have Brown and Moreno mainly running. There is a third party on the ticket, a Libertarian, but for the most part, it's going to come down to the Democrat, Sherrod Brown, versus the Republican, Bernie Moreno. And that is the person who's going to represent me in Congress, specifically in the Senate. Each state has 2 senators. This year, we will pick one of those senators. One of those senators will either be Bernie Moreno or Sherrod Brown. I will vote for one of those candidates, and then that candidate for the next 6 years will vote for me and the rest of Ohio. The candidate that wins, whether it's Brown or Moreno, thus represents the entire state and will vote on laws or wars based on what he believes the people of Ohio want. That's how it works. So I got to make that choice. Next, we look at the representative in Congress. Mundy for the Democrats versus Bob Latta, who's been here for quite some time, will represent us in Congress, or more specifically, the House of Representatives. There are 435 seats in the House of Representatives. I get to pick one of the guys or one of those dots for the House of Representatives to pass laws or send us to war or not war. Bob or Keith, who's it going to be, the Republican or the Democrat? And you can see right there, 435 seats in the House of Representatives. Get to pick one of them. Here you can see the entire map of the nation. These are all the different congressional districts. If you were to break down every little shape on there, you would count 435 little shapes. And all those represent different districts where a representative represents the people of those different geographical spaces. When the congressman goes to Congress, he or she will make votes based on what the people in that little shape believe. I can't go to Washington, D.C. every day and vote. He does it for me. I can't read every single bill and law and make every single decision. And neither can all the people in my shape, which is right around here. So all the people in this shape, we just live our lives, do our regular thing, and our congressional representative will make the decisions for us. We zoom in on Ohio and we can see the specific shapes. And so for each of these different colored shapes, there's a representative, and that representative or congressman represents us and will make the ultimate decision. We vote on November 5th to pick one, and then for the next 2 years, that representative will make decisions for us on laws and hopefully do a good job. Doesn't, then we will pick someone new next time. Here we are, number 4. This is where we live. We'll pick our candidate, our red dot, who will sit in Congress and vote yes or no on issues and hopefully help us out. I vote for them. 3 candidates, possibly, mainly just 2 right now for Congress. A Republican versus a Democrat. More than likely, the Republican is going to win for the 20th year in a row or whatever it is. And then that person will make decisions for the next 2 years for me while I work, take care of my family, and enjoy my leisure time whenever I can. Live my life. Because I don't want to go to Washington, D.C. and read bills every day, make decisions every day. So we, in a representative democracy or republic, pick someone to do it for us. What else is on the ballot that I'm going to look at here in my district? Issue 1. So you can see right there the districts in Ohio, how the map is shaped out. Each of the different districts have a different representative. What is being proposed in Ohio is that we're going to redraw the lines. Some people think that this is gerrymandering. They do not appreciate the way that the districts are designed. They believe that the districts were designed possibly to marginalize certain voters and benefit other voting groups. And so these lines have been challenged, and they're leaving it up now to the people to decide. And the belief is that they could redraw the lines with independent-minded people that are going to create fair districts. Or you could vote no and say just leave it the way it is. Vote yes, and a new independent, supposedly, group will come in, redraw the lines, make them more fair, less marginalized. No one really benefits or loses. Equality, one man, one vote. Or you vote no and say, are you sure that you're really going to be able to independently, fairly, and equally create these districts? Or you can vote no and say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I have to make that decision on November 5th. Should we redo the lines? Just leave it alone. Also on my ballot is a tax levy renewal. Should I fund with my tax dollars better streets, roads, and bridges? This is a renewal of a levy that was passed before. That levy or tax was not permanent. And so that tax is coming to an end. And we in Jennings Township get to decide, do we want to renew it? Do we want to continue to spend our tax dollars on streets, roads, and bridges? Next one, another renewal, another tax. This time my tax dollars will fund Jennings local schools. So this had already passed before, but the initial one, the time frame had expired. And it's good that it's not a permanent forever tax etched in stone. The 5-year levy. Now we have another one, and the people get to decide again, do you want to continue to fund the schools? Yes or no? Well, given that my son attends the school, and being that I am a teacher, not at this school, but I do have students from this school, I am more than likely going to say, yes, I'm willing to invest in our future and pay taxes. So there it is. At least I've told you one of the votes that I'm going to make. Yes, on the levy to fund Jennings local schools.